2.2 finish. Let me see what we can talk. If 2.2 finish, then we have to go to other point, right? Then we come to 2.3. See what is 2.3? Well, 2.3 is sometimes quite vague. Okay, 2.3, I have make it easy for you, right? And this also inside your chart, the organization chart that the PowerPoint that I first sent to you. So you need to tell the difference between an effective work group and effective team. So let's go step by step. So 2.3 is just asking you on the characteristics between and differences between these two groups. And it's effective. It's not only group, but it's effective. This work group is effective. And you have to recognize the effectiveness characteristic of that group and the team so that you can know the differences. And the examiner on 2.3 is trying to ask you this. So you can see the difference here, right? So I make these two charts for you. So you just follow this and then you write. But let me elaborate a little bit. The goal of a group are clearly understood. So if the goal of the group is clearly understood, right? That means the other one, right, may not be so clearly understood. That's why you need a clear goal to be defined by your leader. So in an effective group, the goals are very clearly defined. And people in the group work well together. That doesn't mean people in a team do not work well together. But the characteristic of an effective group expounded by some author, this one is taken from some author, is that the goals are clearly defined. So that's a characteristic of an effective group. If your goal is not clearly defined, then your group is not effective. So next is the people in the group work together. If the people in the group do not work together, then your group cannot be effective. It's kind of quite common sense. Oh? But honestly, if you are just putting the few points and elaborate a bit, I think there's no reason you cannot pass through with this so-called 2.3. There is a sense, there is a feeling of belongingness. I cannot really explain this because feeling of belongingness, right, can also be found in a team, right? But try to understand that the effective group must have a feeling of belongingness, right? That means you like to belong to the group. You're so happy to be in the group. You're so happy to see the group when you meet them, right? And then a group should have this kind of sense of belongingness. And it's much easier on this way because they do not have a stringent target to fill. So everybody can have a little bit of fun, which is become belongingness to me is socialization, right? So it just makes sense, right? In terms of socialization, in terms of having more fun, I think belong to a group would have more fun than the team, right? You belong to, because team, you cannot have too much fun because your team is pushing you towards achieving certain result quite fast, right? Okay, the next one is on sense of responsibility for making the group work. There are shared sense of responsibility, right? So you just write this, right? It's quite difficult to explain what I mean by shared responsibility for making the group work. In team also, right? So what's the difference? Next one is the member of the group are able to communicate openly.
Maybe, right? Because if in a team you communicate openly, you might hurt your feeling of a team, right? But in a group, sometimes not necessarily means you need to have a team spirit inside it. Maybe you have some interest group. What you need is to say that, okay, we belong to the animal society. We don't care what's happening in the society. We make sure that animal must be care of, right? Right. We must not kill the animal. We must not chase the animal away from the area which he like to be, right? Even he litter the area, right? So there's a lot of things that you can communicate quite freely, but in a team, no, right? Because the team has got a very control target. So 6, people in the team are willing to listen and respect the point of view. Maybe you're right. Because group has got not so much of a target and not so much of a goals expectation. So I think maybe the atmosphere could be a bit less tense, right? Therefore, the people in the group are more willing to listen to each other and respect each other in a very informal way. This is what I say. Then you can write something like that. Huh? Then number 7, the introduction of a new idea help to maintain interest and motivation. Maybe so lah. I mean, in a group, in a work group, you can always introduce new idea anytime. But in the team, maybe not so, right? Because your team is progressing on a synergy on a one project. You can't just simply introduce new idea and have motivation to create your own activity when at which stage of the time that you require to. Possible. So the last one is about the role and responsibility within the group are shared and interdependable. Okay, we just write this. And these are some of the characteristics of the effective group. Next is not on point form. What supposed to be an effective group? This is a characteristic. This is also the characteristic, right? But the form of presentation is a bit different. So we start off with clear goal. You see, the goal of a team a bit different, right? From the goal of a work group, right? Work group, the goal may not be as clear as a team. So the characteristic of a team must have clear goal, right? And the skill set must be relevant, interest must be relevant, and the trust is very important. Mutual trust is very important to put the team together. But for a work group, this one is not so important because we don't mention any trust here, right? Yeah, we already know about socialization here, right? So for a group, we talk so much about socialization. For a team, we talk so much about mutual trust. So it seems that relationship within the team is more important than the work group. So work group, we don't have to, even you need to respect people you want to, but if you don't respect people you don't want to, you're still happily working in the group. But for a work team, cannot, right? You have to be, make yourself trustworthy among your team member. Okay, there again, effective work group must have unified commitment. Group don't have to have this. So your commitment must be standard. And it seems that you need to have better communication within the team than in the group. So effective. Now you introduce one thing come in, right? Even more powerful than communication, negotiation. Right? Negotiation is a kind of asking for something more. But in addition, both sides must have more. And it's what we call the win-win situation. So it's a little bit more effort than communication. You need persuasion, you need technique, you need negotiation skill, right? In your team. But in the work group, it may not be so. So team require even more leadership to be around, right? More leader to be around. And not only leader, the leader must be appropriate to the team that you belong to. So you send a leader who is not appropriate, then the team cannot perform effectively, right? For example, your leader are very good in certain area which your team are not going to, the team target is not going to have, right? Then it becomes not very appropriate. So the team require a lot of internal and external support, right? A team always requires support from the top, right? A team also require a lot of internal support. But for a work group with a interest group about animal care or interest group about video editing groups, that is also a work group, right? They go for certain interests, go for certain hobby, so they are not so formalized. So the effectiveness of that group much more on a lot on socialization rather than business-like in this area. So you want to say a little, it didn't ask you to tell about your differences between these two groups, but you have to know how to make the team effective based on what criteria. So you say, oh, the team effective is like that. The team effective is like that. I think that's good enough to cover this question. Okay, this is what I have done for you and research for you on this area. So now we have coming to our task 3. Okay, task 3. I have to drink because I don't drink, I lost my voice. If I drink, then I have to go to, we have to release for, I have to stop for a while. Okay, this one is about effectiveness and performance, which I actually spoken a lot on our last session, right? That's why I didn't put much. And also last section, just on Monday, I spoke about a lot about this leadership development. So these are the questions that are from you, right? So I would like to just put you in certain area that which I didn't speak before. So put it in another angle. So instead of talking about organizational effectiveness, we need to talk about effective leadership, right? But this effective leadership is for our next task, right? But there's no harm just have a look at this. You see, in any leadership, to be effective, you need to have vision. You need to have a strategic action. And this one is not much different from our task 1, right? No, our module 1, right? You need to formulate the strategy, and then you come to this. Okay, the leadership, we leave it to some other time. Let's see what I can talk about your task 3, because today we are talking about your task 3. Okay, I want you to look into this area, which is a requirement by your assignment brief. So before I miss out, I need you to understand that why you need to study this. And sometimes, if you do not give the examiner what is inside this so-called indicative content, then your criteria is not perfect. So all the blue, these things just come in, right? I'm not quite sure whether it's my sound. Okay, we are talking about EFQM excellency. What is this? Right, so you may have to mention some of which somehow, somewhere, especially in your development of your so-called leadership. We spoke a lot on leadership, but we never talk about, we speak a lot of how to schedule a development of leadership. We talk about experience, we talk about talent, we talk about the right staff, talent plus experience equal to the right staff, right? These are something that we talk about schedule to train leadership. We talk about expectorate last week. But then we didn't talk about this, right? We didn't say about this. So today we're going to talk about this, right? And also we have to be a bit watchful, right? Task 3 is all about this. I don't know whether it's from my sound. Okay, so we are talking about these two areas, right? This area and this area, and because we will have to make an understanding on this, and we try to incorporate this into our task 3, right? So because that's why you need to understand this model. So what is this model? That's why I'm showing you this model. Okay, this model is what? I make the research for you, and I put this model here. I take this one from a website. Okay, what is EFQM excellency? What is that? Right, because it's inside your so-called intensive content component. We have to know. So, see here. EFQM excellency model. So what is this here, right? The meaning is just like this. It is just a standard by certain country, and most often than not, it is the European country. So we know a little bit like this because this model, we are reading a UK diploma, right? So we need to know what's happening in UK. So this model was expounded in launched in 1992 by this European foundation. So now you know E is European, F is foundation. Otherwise, there's no meaning. Everybody can have his abbreviation, right? So E stands for European Foundation for Quality Management. All right. And that is the EFQM model. There's a lot of changes, right? But it's just like that. It's just like that. So if you need to mention a bit, perhaps you'd like to include in task 1, task 3, whereby we talk about 2 areas: organization effectiveness, organization performance, and also leadership development. You need to mention this. So there's nothing, I think there's nothing so exciting about this, but you must know what is this. So there are 3 circles here. The European Foundation are very focused on, right? They go for the direction, they go for the result, they go for the execution, right? And direction, we mean these 2 areas here, and result, we mean these 2 areas here. In execution, we mean these are the things. And here are all those things that have to be spoken in detail. Okay, so let's go a little bit more in detail here, right? What is direction? Because the three circles seems to be very important in this model. So you don't have to write this model in your task 3.1 or 3.2, but if you are able to link a little bit here, I think it will be much better because they are insisting that you must have knowledge on this model, right, to satisfy your criteria. So you have to be cleverly putting that you understand what is direction, what is result, what is execution. Of course, those small words left and right here may not be so important. At least you know these are the key focus of that model, right? And then you know there is three circles which you have to mention on. So what are they? Result, direction, execution, what are they? Okay, direction is always talking about two criteria, right? So in the direction and in the idealistic of the model, in direction, he just mentioned is vision, strategy, right? And the other criteria, he mentioned about culture and leadership. So in terms of anything to be done, a direction is so important, and this is the indication plan or the goal, the target or whatever is it, you need to format. You have to follow two criteria. One criteria, you must mention the vision, the purpose, and also the strategy. The other one, you must mention the culture and the leadership. That's why he linked up this with leadership. So if you want to talk about direction to the European Foundation, you must talk about strategy, you talk about vision, you must also mention leadership. In that relation, you have to mention a little bit about culture, right? That is what they mean by direction. Next is execution. Execution, you got three criteria, right? So you have to try, you see, every model has got his inclination to certain aspect. So you need to try to explain how these three models fit into the way you explain company efficiency, company performance, and also leadership style, and also cultural involvement, right? And there are criteria for you to follow. So the first criteria is the 1 and 2. Then the 3, 4, and 5 is no longer a direction. It's an execution, right? So in the execution itself, right? To me, execution is something like a kind of chain management, right? So in the execution, this European model want you to engage the stakeholder. Not all the model asks you to engage the stakeholder. So in that relation, you must be very well versed with the stakeholder mapping, right? Last time that I mentioned to you, right? Stakeholder may be sleeping. One of stakeholder, like government, may be sleeping when nobody violates the law. They are so powerful, but they are not active because you do not violate the law. Suddenly they spring up to action because you violate the law, you become active, they take action. So this is engaging the stakeholder. That means you be aware of the risk or your antagonization with the external environment. Sometimes could be the government of other country. Okay, next one is you must, we say this many times, we must create sustainable value. All right. In this sustainable value is not the proposition value, is what we call the green value, right? Yeah. And then also to a certain extent, your success depends not only greenery, not only next generation must be happy of what you're doing now, you also must make sure you create some profit. The profit actually comes from here. The last one is the criteria. So the criteria of your result, right, which is what we call your outcome, the measuring of your result, also now ask you to take into consideration of stakeholders' perception, right? Stakeholders' perception in here, he mentioned a lot of feedback. Feedback from your staff, feedback from your customer is very important, right? Feedback on what? Feedback on the leadership, personality, feedback on the organization, ways to get things done, right? And this were somehow rather a bit more further than just seeing the figure on the result, right? Maybe you made $1 million, but then according to this European Foundation, it's not the end yet. You must see whether your stakeholder, can it be your customer, can it be your staff, right? Can it be your so-called even government? Are they happy with your performance or not? And it is sustainable or not, right? Whether it affects the healthiness of the environment or not, or did it produce the environment or not, right? And the result also mentioned about performance lah. Okay, then you come to that radar. I think not necessary to mention but I mentioned this model to let you highlight and let you understand what is the abbreviation, right? We know European Foundation for Quality Management, right? In that nature, you require 3 circles, and this circle is direction, result, and execution. Okay, direction is kind of your planning. Result is your kind of outcome. Execution is the process in which you manage the implementation. And all this will build up your center core is what we call an organization. Okay, so much so that I spent a few minutes to let you understand what is required in the criteria. Okay, let's go back a little bit on this one is quite difficult to, I want to talk a little bit about, but because I did not print it very well, maybe I just listen to my words. I think will be good enough because the focus is not very sharp. I just do it just now. Okay, the first thing I want to talk related to your task 3 is that task 3 is asking you for a good leadership. Okay, a good leadership must have what we call a resonant. This is called resonant wavelength. So I want to let you know, give you a little bit more knowledge of your task 3, which you need not have to write on this, but it's good for learning that effective organization required an effective leadership. And effective strategic leadership required to be resonant with the subordinate and with their organization. In a nutshell, resonant means you must speak with the same wavelength, having a good relationship, right? Understanding your so-called problem of the subordinate also on one angle, and on the other hand is the need of the organization. You must balance the need. So you need to be very, very, what you call positive here. This word is positive, right? So in order to be an effective organization, you need an organization to be very, very effective. And to be very effective, you need an organization with a leadership to be very, very positive, to create a positive environment, to create a positive climate, which will be contagious. And if the positivity is transferred to the team, and then synergically, the outcome of the performance will be drastically improved. Okay, so I need to explain a little bit here, all right, because we still have 20 more minutes to go, about what we call the feeling of positive. You see, positive is not easy to explain. Where positive is a feeling, and it's very difficult to explain the feeling. How do you know people feel positive? So there are some gurus who write something, right? So the question is that if you have a good positive climate, what you should have? Because these are the good indicator, as many gurus have put it. This word is indicator. If you have good climate, there will be a lot of satisfaction among your staff. If you have positive climate, then satisfaction of the staff will increase, according to many books. And the satisfaction is increased, then your staff will leave or quit less. Therefore, you will cut costs because you will spend less money recruiting new staff. So we are now talking a resonant leadership need to be positive, which will be contagious throughout and hang over to your team to have a synergy to build satisfaction. And satisfaction is important in a high-performance organization because satisfaction induce or retain staff, let alone talent, right? So they are together. And the next thing we need to say is about mood. There are clear-cut saying that if you had good mood, right, then means you have good business. It just makes sense. It just makes sense, right? So then bad mood, bad business, right? So this author is trying to tell you, in order to be effective organization, you need to have a very positive climate. So if you see or you enter an organization where everybody say bad about the company, it won't be very long, the company will close shop. Because if the staff is not happy, it will spread words around. And you have to remove this staff, otherwise your company will collapse. So good mood means good work. Good work means good business. Good business means good profit, right? So resonant leadership, which is required for an effective organization, means team spirit, right? Also, you must have people who are very passionate. You must have people who are very enthusiastic about doing the job, right? You must also have a lot of cooperation. So why I'm telling you this? Because these are the characteristics of a so-called effective organization. Then again, effective organization need to have what we call EQ, right? So EQ is what? What is EQ here? EQ, right? EQ. Right? So look at it about EQ, right? EQ, we are talking about mutual comfort. My writing is really look like a doctor. So in order to see whether an organization is high performance or whether the characteristic of an effective organization with an effective leadership, these are the telltale signs. You need to have an EQ, emotion, intelligence leader. And how do you see it? They must have mutual comfort. Everybody are comfort with each other. If they are not comfort with other, right? Everybody quarrel, every day there's conflict. That means you don't have a good EQ. You don't have a good EQ leader around to make sure EQ is maintained within the team. Then you must have shared idea, right? And EQ always have shared idea, right? And then you also must have what we call collective decision. Collective decision, right? Okay, so you look around it, so it's always very cool. Cool. Okay, I come back. Excuse me for a while because I need to drink a lot of water because I talk for 2 hours. So if I drink a lot of water, if the place is very cold, right, I need to go to the restroom many times. So sorry about that. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue. Let's continue. We are now talking about EQ. Why are we talking about EQ? Right? Because you need an EQ leader to articulate, to induce good mood, good climate, positive environment, right? So physically, EQ leader, it is very important. And what I'm saying just now is that how do you know EQ leader exit in this company? And so that there are some telltale signs that this company is or expect to do well. So I take the trouble to do some research and I single out some of those very, very important points which you can include, right? Without even so-called do some reading about how to judge whether the company is effective or not. How to judge whether what you call the whether the so-called good climates happen in that country, that so-called that organization. So I summarize it up down, and because I do not have time to type it up, so I just write it just now during my dinner time so that I have in time to talk to you about this. So it's very important that you write this thing. If you don't know what to write, you just write, right? Effective organization means you must have this kind of thing happening in your organization. And how do you know this type of thing happen in the organization? Even if you are not in the organization, there are some telltale signs. And these are some of the symptoms that you can anticipate from a so-called good and effective organization that is what we call a high-performance management organization. So in addition to being a EQ leader, which is so difficult to identify, I make it so easy by just tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? mutual comfort, share ideas. You see, these are very powerful words, right? And share excitement, you see, share excitement. Many people are not thinking about all this because to a leader, this thing is not important. But if you want to become a very, what we call EQ leader, take trouble to understand. The day we're talking about double loop and single loop, right? To understand that these are all the symptoms that is required, or all the telltale sign, not the symptom. Symptom is somebody who gets sick. Okay, share idea, mutual conflict, learn from one another, right? Right, don't keep secret, learn from one another. That's why you see sometimes people, for out of the blue, they send you the whatever, right? I share with you, I share with you, I share with you. It makes sense, right? Because he have a new idea, he share with you. If you don't want, you just delete, right? So share idea. You got good idea, must share. And then you must make decision collaboratively, right? That means joint decision, kind of Japanese joint decision. We become more and more like Japanese. We must try to make work meaningful, right? EQ leaders are expected to do all this. Share excitement. Well, something really quite new, right? But I think it just makes sense. Next one, effective organization must have effective so-called leadership. And I have mentioned last week, on Monday, the self-awareness is very, very important. So I rush to what is self-awareness now, right? Self-awareness to author is so simple that you have to be aware that the feeling of others, right? And then you have to be very constructive. When you do something, you don't just think about yourself, your target as a leader. You must be aware whether your subordinate suffer or not, whether your subordinate is capable to do the job. That's why we have a lot of leadership, which we link a lot to your structure, the maturity of your follower. So a self-awareness leader must make sure that whatever he do, right, the feeling of the so-called subordinate is of utmost important, first important. And then he must have empathy. He must have empathy, right? He must have empathy. Right? So what is empathy, right? We are talking on this is because we are trying to make a lot of so-called understanding on your task 3, which is actually organization effectiveness and good leadership, right? And also the other portion, which we now have a time, we'll continue next week, how to write so-called leadership development one more time. I have teach, but how to write, I hasn't teach yet, right? So maybe we will leave it for next week. That is a little bit on our task 3. Task 3 point something, right? I didn't have the task 3.2, 3.2, 3.3, right? 3.2, 3.3, 3.2, 3.1, 3.2. Okay, we'll continue because we are a bit on schedule. Because today we are not supposed to be on task, but because we are on schedule, so next week we'll continue. So let me finish this one. This one is only 3.1. 3.1 is all about leadership effectiveness and high performance organization. So now we are in the process of telling you what is empathy. Empathy everybody can say that empathy is putting yourself in somebody's shoe, but it doesn't mean anything. That means as a good leader, you must listen, right, to other people's perception. You must be an active listener, right? Not only put yourself in somebody's shoe. You must also put onto your antenna. You must sense how somebody else see the situation that you see. It's a kind of tall order, right? Right. In the dictionary, empathy doesn't mean like that. But in a high-performance organization, empathy means you must sense how people feel. Not how you feel, how people feel. How someone feel on the situation that you see, not he see. Right? So whatever you see, the other party may not see what you see. But you must try to see what you see and what he see or what she see is similar. So this is the tall order of empathy, right? And besides, you must be an active listener, right? And you must actually talking about people, not only people itself. You not only listen to what people say, you must also try to listen to what and try to interpret people's perception. People's perception is not what they think, it's what they perceive. Perceive is not thinking, right? So you must analyze their perception. Okay, next one before we knock off for the day is the social awareness. A good leader, a good organization, so-called, we're having a high performance, must have some socialization awareness. So what is this? Socialization is kind of somebody call it a limbo tango. When you dance a tango, you are very close to each other. You move one step, you respond in another step, which an equal pose. So socialization is kind of what we call the limbo tango. So in a socialization, especially if you are a leader, having a duty to get an unpopular job to be done, right? Nobody want to do the job, but somebody have to do the job. So you must use your commanding power to discharge the duty. You create a lot of resistance to change. You create a lot of fear. So you must calm down fear. So socialization means a leader in that level must learn how to calm down the fear, right? You may not be directly go on to the conflict area. You must say other things to ease it out. Somebody say it's a hamburger theory, right? But before you eat the hamburger, you eat a hamburger is sandwiched in between two bread. So you coat up with two bread of sugar before you actually eat the hamburger. That means you say some good words before you want to say the bad words. So the next one is about share value. So socialization awareness means you need to make share value a little bit more informal, right? A bit more comfortable for people to understand. And also, you need to be careful about not only the task priority, relationship, having a little bit of a relaxation and fun should be induced in it. In socialization, we talk about sense of belongingness. Right? Sense of belongingness in Maslow theory means something to do with the happy together, right? And you really feel that you belong to that area. So you must inculcate certain sense of belonging to feel that people wanted to belong to your group. And that is what we call social awareness. And it needs to be very, very transparent in your process of doing your job. The last part All right, last part on our task 3.1 is that you have to be having what we call an openness, and your openness should be very authentic, right? So, you see, somebody was having a feedback. Give me 1 or 2 more minutes to finish my story. I know time is up. Somebody was saying that asking for feedback from a client in the hotel. He's a chef, right? He's also an owner. And then the couple that visit them got offered, oh, you have a very, very good hotel, you know, your food are good, you know, it's wonderful. And this is the first time this couple come in. It's not his friend, you know. Oh, your food are so good. Your hotel is so clean. Your pillow is so nice. Your environment is so clean. Your staff is so well behaved. But I love the best is the food. You see, this is what we call insincere, non-authentic openness. You know what did the owner tell them? Hey, hi, you haven't finished your food. How do you know the food is good? You see? So you give a praise when praise is being analyzed and praise is so-called is true. You don't give a freak so-called recognition or praising when you didn't even taste it yet, you see. So this is what I call authentic openness. And you must have what we call feeling for others. You must also try to understand people's action. Most important thing is people's belief. You see, Christianity, Buddhism, right? Muslim, all these are people's belief. And that is very important. You see, religion is one kind of a belief. Okay, we have finished until 3.1. Next week, we continue our 3.2, which we will gear towards this. Performance one more time, and effective organization one more time. Right? So your task 3.2 is about a strategic leadership, right? I will explain 3.2 one more time. I already explained last on Monday, but I explained 3.2, which is leadership development on the next week, and I also try to explain strategic leadership and organizing effectiveness one more time. And this is the notes I actually prepared, but I have no time to explain. But next week we will continue. So I will stop the share.